Okay, welcome everybody online to our council meeting this evening, September 14th. It's 5 p.m. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. And just let you know that our mayor, Honorable Christie, I guess, Honorable Mayor, is on line with us. He's on the phone. He's on holidays, but there's some items he would like to be involved with. So he's with us through that medium. So if we can look at the agenda and see if there's any additions or deletions to our agenda.
Chair Gullickson?
Yes.
Just wondering if we could consider a slight ordering change, and consider the municipal stimulus program to the top of the list.
We have that as number one already on our list.
Very good, thank you. I was working off an older version of the agenda, so thank you for that.
Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you. I will move that we adopt the agenda then as presented. That would be correct, with no additions.
All those in favor? Unanimous. So we'll move right directly to that request for decision to 5.4 municipal stimulus program selections for submissions, and I'll turn that over to our CAO.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Council has reviewed the municipal stimulus program as well as the proposed projects that we've put forward past meetings. And so I won't go through in detail as to the actual program details, although I can answer any questions you may have. Senior Manager Reyes and I participated in a webinar with Municipal Affairs on the program itself late last week. And so we're, I would say, well versed on the details, although we know before that meeting. The change from what you've seen before is that we've removed the projects that didn't receive council support in the past. So those being projects 3, 4, and 5. We're down to projects 4, 5, and 6. We're down to the Macomb Fire Hall, Highway 12 Infrastructure Improvement Program, and the Snow Storage Facility. We have honed in on a recommendation for projects number 2 and 3, those being the Highway 12 Infrastructure Improvement Program and the Snow Storage Facility, only because of uncertainty with project number 1, the location. Once we started digging into actual potential locations for the fire hall, it quickly became apparent that there is some risk to the selection of a site that would potentially jeopardize your completion of the project within the timelines required by the province. And so because of that risk, we are recommending that continue on its existing timeline within your 10-year capital plan, fire hall, and that you look to advance Highway 12 infrastructure improvements and the snow storage facility listed as the projects number 2 and 3. The total cost of these 2 projects would exceed the funding made available to the city under the municipal stimulus program. We've included in your capital budget costs of $1.3 million for the Highway 12 infrastructure improvement program, as well as $933 for the snow storage facility. 900, yes, between 900,000 and $1 million. I'm sorry, I don't have the exact number here for the snow storage facility. And so it is likely that you will exceed your funding. There is contingency included in both of those budgets. But should you expend the full contingency on them, you would potentially be exceeding available grant funding by up to $600,000. We estimate that the actual cost to the city outside of the grant funding would be somewhere between $400,000 and $600,000. Your approval of these 2 projects does lead you to potentially having to find money to make these projects happen. And we have crafted your 2021 capital works budget on the presumption that you accept a recommendation tonight. And so when I say you have to find money, you don't actually have to find money. We have sourced the funding, but it's funding outside of the municipal stimulus program. I've also confirmed with Municipal Affairs that they still fully intend to release operational funding for the city of Lacombe and other urban municipalities within the province in support of revenue lost through COVID. That program was announced in late July and totals $606 million for Albertans. The city of Lacombe can expect to receive some funds through that program, but details haven't been developed yet. With that, I would ask that you give us direction on which projects you'd like to see applied for and executed memorandums of understanding sent in to Municipal Affairs for funding. These have to be confirmed by October 1st, so should you not select projects tonight, you will have one final opportunity on September 28th. Although that does administratively put us in a bit of a bind, because we would almost certainly have to just write all the applications in advance.
Thank you, CEO Howdy. Mayor Creasy, because you're on the phone, do you have any comments on that?
Thanks, Chair Gallatin. I was just curious how the allocation of those city funds, the 600,000 plus or minus, how that will affect our projects moving forward with either the fire services building or the public works, the planned public works building.
There would be slightly less available, and so those projects, should they go ahead and receive council's endorsement, which are already reliant on debt funding, would be even more so reliant on debt funding. Now, the public works building is already in the 2021 capital budget, so there'd be no change to what's been proposed to you in that budget that you have with you this evening. The fire hall and all future projects, I would say, in your 10-year capital plan will require decisions by council about your tolerance for taking on debt and servicing that debt in the context of your annual budget preparation and taxation policy, which has some limits on how much tax increases you all put forward each year. So it will lower the ability to do those, is the short answer.
Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So then the Public Works building allocations of $1 million will still be going forward if we do not do the fire hall? Yes, correct. At this point, you have $1 million that's been approved in 2020. We haven't expended significant resources towards that $1 million yet. And you have $4 million proposed in 2021 for the capital, or in your capital works budget for the public works building. If I can continue, sorry. So the fire hall in Cam, we've proposed different variety of different locations. You're just pressed for a timeline to make that decision to pursue the fire hall option, or what's not practical that we could not move forward?
So we have started reviewing the fire services review with Lacombe County. And I would say what has become clear to us as we start reviewing both the services itself, and as you know, it's a shared service with the county, and potential locations for the fire hall, is that we will be rushing not only ourselves, but we will be forcing our regional partners to also rush some decisions and some conversations about that shared service if we're to pursue that project as our number one goal. I think you'll be rushing a decision that shouldn't be rushed.
Councillor Connick?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gallatin. Yeah, that was kind of my question too. I guess you pretty much answered. Yeah, I was more curious what time it is as well. I mean, we have, by the time you go to RFP in the spring, we do have 6-7 months to get it sorted, but you don't think in those 7 months you could get it?
Oh, I just, I guess maybe I should be more. I think there's a 90% or higher chance that we would get it sorted in those 7 months. I think that it's very likely we would get it, that it wouldn't be an issue. But if I'm to look at the risk, there's definitely a risk that you won't. Whenever you're acquiring land, whenever you're dealing with other agencies, in this case Macomb County, there is a level of uncertainty that exists with that project that doesn't exist with the other projects. It's by no means, do I want to give you the impression that I think, oh, we can't get it across the line in time. I just think there's a risk to doing it.
Let me just follow up. Well, because my preference would have been the fire hall, to be honest, and the fire hall and the snow dump over Highway 12, and that's why I say I am surely to goodness you could get it done in those 7 months, but I understand the concerns you have, and yeah, the fact that we have to spend that money by the end of 2021, I guess that's, yeah, I get where you're coming from. It's just unfortunate, I think.
Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So furthermore, to the Public Works, could we still not set aside that $1 million on the projects that could lessen the burden upon borrowing for the fire hall? If you create the priority?
Yes. Yeah. So if we were to receive direction from council this evening to, sorry, let me go back.
That's not.
Coordinator Pettibone, when was the defeated motion to discontinue any spending on the Public Works building?
You'll have to give me about 5 minutes, so I'll have a look and get back to you.
Assuming that 6 months has passed from your notice of motion related to the same, then we could receive direction this evening to halt any spending in the current year on that project, and that would make it available potentially for future projects.
Mayor Creasy, do you have any other comments?
I do not.
Councillor Hibbs?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gallupson. I just have a question. So my math is saying that the program would give us approximately 1.6 million is what we would potentially be entitled to. The fire hall is off the table, let's say. So the other two projects, the highway project is estimated between 1.3 and 1.8, is that correct?
We have narrowed this down and reviewed the contingency that was included on these estimates and the range of estimates, and we're comfortable at 1.3, which still does include a significant contingency.
Okay, so that's why the recommendation is being two projects, even though that would then exceed the amount that we would likely be getting. Just because I wasn't quite sure why we would, like I understand when they're giving out money that you kind of want to use that, but sometimes you also, because they're giving out free money, you're going to therefore spend money, and it's just a matter of, is that really something that we need to be doing right now? Like how critical, for example, is the snow dump project? Obviously, like I said, I think it's already been said, the fire hall would be my top pick, but that's off the table. I'm looking at the other two projects and wondering, do they really both need doing? And perhaps the highway infrastructure one is maybe the one that has a higher priority perhaps. But yeah, I guess I would like to hear the immediacy required for the snow dump proposal.
So I would say that the snow storage facility administratively actually is seen as a higher priority than Highway 12 infrastructure improvement program.
Okay.
The infrastructure improvement program is more about finding a project that fits with the grant eligibility requirements that will require some work over the coming years and isn't currently within the 10-year capital plan. So it was more about finding an opportunity to defray some future costs. The snow storage facility, that is one where we actually we aren't compliant with the Alberta Environment Parks guidelines for it, and so we see that as a higher.
Can I have a follow-up to that then?
Yes.
So turning that on the flip side then, so let's assume that project number 3 becomes the priority and that you do now have room. Is project 2, does it have to look like that? Can it be pared down so that it actually fits, within the dollars that we're getting and not having to, put us at risk at 3.3 to 0.6 more than what we're being allocated? Does that make sense?
Yes, you could reduce the scope. So there's, although the work has been packaged as one, there's really 2 areas that are being addressed there. There's an underground infrastructure component at the intersection of 2A and 12 and some associated alleys. And then there's paving and some select service replacement along the actual highway east of where the outreach school used to be.
Just final comments, and if I might, I'm just concerned, again, I'll just return to what my comment earlier about just because we're getting money, then we're therefore spending. It's like, buying something because it's on sale, it's a great deal, but did you really need it in the first place? And I'm just concerned about putting our future projects that we do feel as a priority. I'm worried about the debt load, I'm worried about things like that, so I guess I'd put it out on the table that perhaps a paring back of maybe have project 2 then, to make it fit within the, allotment that we potentially could be getting from the province and not over and above, and leaving that room for projects that we truly do feel that are more of a significant priority. Just my thoughts.
I just have a concern regarding not doing the fire hall and the fact that we have that lease agreement that starts to increase in a few years. And that becomes like having additional debt on us. It's the same in my mind. It's $100,000 going out for that lease. Was that part of this? Did you take a look at that when you're evaluating the priorities?
It was considered. I can't say we did a quantification of the different factors where we looked at the operating cost of each project and rated that through a weighted scale or anything. It was considered, but no, there's not I can't pull an exact comparison of operating cost impacts for the different projects that we've got here.
Because what would 100,000, just help me out here, what would $100,000 a year, what would that service for debt?
Give me one moment. I can tell you that. $100,000.
Chair Gullickson,
Yes.
while that's being figured out, I was just curious, could we get an approximate breakdown of the difference between the pavement portion of the Highway 12 project and the underground work at the intersection? I guess I'm kind of viewing that underground work as kind of nice to have one day. I mean, I realize that these things can't be put off forever, but it's been quite some time now, and there was a substantial amount of in-house work done in that area. I'm just wondering how critical that portion it is. In saying that, without having an idea of the allotment of those funds to that project, perhaps it isn't worth committing it. But I'd like to have an idea of that, if we could, please.
Director Thompson, do you have that split?
So unfortunately, I do not. When we received the cost estimates, they were lumped together and were not split into the 2 scopes of work that Sale Guy is described. So I don't have that number.
So unfortunately, Mayor Creasy, we don't have that breakdown available to us this evening. We would be able to get that, but of course, it doesn't help you.
Councilor Ross?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gullickson. So from I'm saying, are we bumping the fire hall to 2024 if we don't pursue the fire hall?
I don't know if I would use the term bumping
Something.
because.
Well, okay, the 10-year capital plan is 2024.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I worded that incorrectly.
Sorry.
So, but when we look at the reallocation of public works building, our partnership relationship with the county in terms of cost sharing the project. And as Deputy Mayor Gilkson brought forward, the same thing I would say is our debt servicing of $75,000 or $100,000, depending on the time frame, really taking on, and the 1.6 million, we're really not taking on virtually very little, if any, debt. With doing the math of all them, add them all up to do a hypothetical $6 million land and building. If we don't follow the 1.6 and reallocate the public works million.
To get back to your original question to me, CEO Gotti, it was less than 6 months ago we made that motion, and I texted you the details about Teams. So it's,
Do you have the exact date?
yeah, May 11th, 2020. We voted on that motion. Motion was that in light of the current pandemic and possible changes to provincial funding, halt further spending on public works building until Q3, with the expectation that future financial position will be more certain at that time, and it was defeated. So it would have to come back for November 23rd.
Or, correct me if I'm wrong here, one of the council members from the prevailing side of that last vote could make a motion with a 2/3 majority to bring it back for reconsideration. Is that correct?
That is correct. There was only one council member in favor. That was Councillor Ross, and I believe that's correct. I will just review that in the procedural bylaw.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
While it's happening, I'll respond to your questions. So I just wanted to correct, it is 2023 that we have 500,000 for the fire hall, and 2024, 4.5 million. So spending would begin in 2023 with completion of the building targeted for 2024. You had asked about the overall impact to debt. So $100,000 borrows about, oh, really? I was going to say 1.5. Okay.
Approximately
2 million, up to 2 million. According to our
We
senior
have
manager.
25 year loan on a 25 year.
And so Deputy Mayor Gullickson is correct. I would say that's a correct view of things, that servicing your debt, if you were, regardless of whether you're servicing debt associated with the facility or you are leasing that facility under a rental agreement, the operational impact to your budget is going to be the same. It doesn't really matter. Councillor Ross had asked if you add up, and you'll have to actually just go through those numbers for me one more time, that you were looking to see what the.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, as Deputy Mayor Gullickson and I brought forward with $100,000 worth of services, just to say it's 2 million, and we reallocating to the fire hall project of $1 million, and the 1.6 stimulus, that totals 4.6 million. So if there's a percentage of a relationship with our partner and building this fire hall of a 25 or 30%, that builds you a $6 million fire hall with really not any debt. Is that correct or not? Because the lease payment is servicing hypothetically $2 million is what I'm trying to say.
So if I correctly understand the question, then it is, if you take the $100,000 that is proposed for the fire hall lease by 2026, that equals $2 million of capital spend, plus you have 1.6 available through this program.
Plus 1 million of reallocating from public works.
Plus 1 million of saying put public works on hold, totals 4.6 million.
Yes.
Yes, I'm with you there. I follow. I think that is sound. I think that is sound reasoning from that stance. I mean, there's some equating leases and debts, you know, there's some interpretation, but
If your
yeah.
partner contributes 25 to 33% of a $6 million project, they're putting in 2 million when you have a $6.6 million budget.
Yes. Director Thompson, did you have some more information? You had your hand up.
Yes, I did, if I may. I was able to locate a previous estimate that had the work on Highway 2A separated from the work on Highway 12. And the split is approximately $300,000 for the work within Highway the 2A intersection and the associated alleys, and $1 million with the work on Highway 12. So near the outreach school. So that's the cost split.
Did you hear that, Mayor Creasy?
Grant Creasy?
Unless you cut out or something. Mayor Creasy, if you're, oh, I'm sorry.
Is now exiting.
Oops.
Sorry.
So no, he didn't.
You didn't hear it, yeah. Okay. So $300,000 is approximately for the work right at the intersection, and that is left over from last year is the estimate. Okay. Councillor Connick?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Galt. So what Councillor Ross is suggesting, we put the whole 1.6 into the fire hall. And yet you said you have some reservations about the rest of this. So I'm not sure I'm on board with that idea. I mean, I can see allocating some to the fire hall, not.
So I have some reservations about the risk. I don't want to overplay the reservations that I have about the Lacombe Fire Hall because we were really in a mode to eliminate projects rather than find reasons for them to go ahead because we think all three of these projects are valuable. If council would be more comfortable and you would have like more time or would like to buffer the risk, you could have administration apply for all three projects, attempt to move the fire hall ahead with a backup in case it can't make the timelines, or potentially for further decision-making between these three projects later. It is administratively difficult, but the program does allow you to make application for several projects and then move funds between them. The other thing I wanted to respond to Councillor Hibbs. There is nothing saying you must spend $600,000 more than the program makes available. I would say it would be very much possible to say our number one project is project B, and anything left, put into project C. And we can structure the scope accordingly. Certainly with the Highway 12 infrastructure improvement program, the first thing we would look at is to remove one entire piece of work to make sure it came in on budget. But that's definitely achievable. We can definitely do that.
Councillor Hoopstra?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Gullickson. I guess I haven't heard anybody say, okay, well, Councillor Hibbs addressed this a little bit, that we're allowing this money to influence how we're making decisions. We weren't necessarily going to do these things until this money came on board. But what I am troubled with is that suddenly a fire hall is being pushed ahead of the public works. And our city, our council had the plan to get the public works built. So this money is kind of forcing us to put the fire hall ahead of, and that wasn't our plan. But we're allowing this money to influence our decisions. And I guess I'm troubled with that. I would rather that, let's just do the snow facility and leave it at that. And then carry on with our capital projects as we had hoped. And then we're not pulling money from anywhere else, and we would just leave everything in the order that we had thought was an appropriate order before. I know that the fire hall, the ownership of it changed during this time, but I still think the public works building, it's getting pushed down the line again. And I'm not comfortable with that.
Deputy Mayor, if I may, just to further CEO Gowdy's comment about the procedural bylaw, there are two motions that are relevant here to further Councillor Hookstra's train of thought here. To reconsider can be made only by an individual on the prevailing side who has changed position or view. So for example, Councillor Ross would have to have changed his position from the original notice of motion to halt spending on public works. And the other motion of note here in the procedural bylaw is a written notice of motion to reconsider or rescind be given from one meeting to the next with a minimum of 5 members voting in favor. It's the only way a motion once decided may be reversed, reconsidered, or rescinded within 1 year after the decision. That's all I would say.
Councillor Koenig.
Thank you, Mayor, or Deputy Mayor Coxon. Just a couple more thoughts. I know we're going on and on here about this. I do kind of agree with Councillor Hooks a little bit. I think when I was first elected, Public Works was on the 10-year capital plan, and here we are finally maybe getting it addressed. I do, but I'm on the fence because I think the fire hall is important too. At the end of the day, though, Councillor Hibbs makes a good point that maybe we should spend over the allotment either. So there's lots to consider here. I just had a real quick question about the snow dump facility. I know that one cell that we've identified, and we're going to be seeing something in camera later tonight, a proposal that also identifies that cell. Is that a problem or not?
No, that will not be a problem. The other item you'll be reviewing in camera is a conceptual only proposal, and whether it's that cell or a different cell or plus or minus one cell is yeah.
Okay.
Councillor Jacobson.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I actually wholly concur with Councillor Hoopster's comments. So much that I'm prepared to make the motion right now, that council direct administration to submit an application and enter into memorandum of agreement in the prescribed form with the government of Alberta for the snow storage facility project as described in this memorandum, and include the project in the 2021 capital budget.
Okay, any further discussion on that motion? Did you catch that, Ross?
I did, Deputy Mayor. Motion as presented.
Yep. That's regarding the snow storage facility. So if there's no further discussion,
Just one comment.
no? Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gox. And I guess my only comment, and I respect the capital plan as intended under previous scenario. When we did the land swap exchanges, that was for the best interest of the taxpayers. And now all due respect to the previous discussion, I feel that kind of changes because we now went into ownership of a building for land swapping to deal with another building, which now we end up leasing the same building back, which in all due respect, in my opinion, kind of changes the opportunity to basically have a fire hall with lease versus debt that doesn't really affect our capital budget. So I don't support the motion. So thank you.
No further discussion? Councillor Hibbs?
Just a clarification, so the motion is just for the snow storage facility project, is that correct?
But other motions can be made.
Other motions can you make? That is all my point is, yeah, okay.
Okay, so if there's no further discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? So Councillor Ross was opposed. Mayor Creasy, can you vote? He's there? I don't think he's there anymore.
He's not there.
He's not there. We lost him. So the motion passed.
Deputy Mayor.
Mayor Coxon?
Pardon me? Oh, Councillor Hibbs,
I would like to make a second motion in regards to this business.
certainly.
I'm not exactly sure how to word it, but I would like that second project get consideration as well if there's leftover funds, so that it wouldn't be for the entire project presented here, the infrastructure for the highway, but it would be to the point of utilizing any funds that were left over from the grant, because the project that we have just accepted won't do that, or potentially will
Won't
not do
use it
that.
all.
Yes. So I guess I would need help in crafting the language to get that point across.
C.L. Gabby?
I would suggest that a possible motion would be example preamble here. The council direct administration to submit application and enter into a memorandum of agreement in the prescribed form with the government of Alberta for the Highway 12 infrastructure improvement program with a scope
amended from that presented in this memo to fully utilize the available grant funds, but no further.
Yes.
Is that, legislator or legislative coordinator Pettibone, can you read that back? It sounded kind of awkward when I said it.
Sure. The council directed administration to submit an application and enter into a memorandum of agreement in the prescribed form for the Highway 12 Infrastructure Improvement Program with the scope amended from that presented in the memo to fully utilize available grant funds, but no further.
If that would work for your.
I believe that captures what my intention is, so.
So you wish to make that motion as
That
presented? then?
that will be my motion. I worded it so wonderfully.
Councillor Conick,
And would it include the project in 2021 capital budget? Just for further clarification?
Yes, sorry, and include the project in the 2021 capital budget.
So we're clear on the school.
Yes,
you're okay with that?
yeah, that's what I meant to say.
You got that, Ross? Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So then, if that's supporting the budget, then money from MSI would be topped up of that to that amount to make that project work, then correct?
So
Or
that,
that's just strictly budget?
that's not how I understood that. Although certainly when you review your capital budget, you still have an opportunity to make those changes, but should this motion pass, the understanding that I have is that I'm going to use the number of $1 million for the snow storage facility. Let's say that costs only $900,000. We have a budget of $1 million, but we only spend $900,000. That the remaining $760,000, that's what would be available for the infrastructure improvement program. That there would be no other funding sources allocated to this project.
Yes.
So no, there would be no top up from other funding sources.
Okay, any further discussion regarding that motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the motion. All those in favor? Unanimous? Thank you. Now we'll maybe move back to our original, there's nothing else with that scale?
Actually, if I can clarify, and I should have done this before, but just because there is two distinct components of work, I want to be clear with council that the portion that is going to be removed for sure from the scope next year is the actual Highway 2A and 12 underground work. We are going to continue with the paving and service replacement on 50th Avenue. Please let me know if I've incorrectly prioritized that.
I think that would be my thought.
But I'm fine with that.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing else regarding that, we'll move back to our regular schedule here. We'll go to 5.1, airport paving contract award. Manager Mitchell, there she is at the back.
I'm back here. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gullickson. Can everybody hear me from back here?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So before council today is an exciting opportunity for both the city and the Lacombe Regional Airport. This year, the airport was awarded a STIP Community Airport Grant for the rehabilitation of the airport runway, taxiway, and main apron. This project was originally identified as a 2026 to 2027 project in the 10-year capital plan. However, the Lacombe Flying Club anticipated that this project would be cost prohibitive without grant funding. And with the support of the Airport Advisory Committee, we proactively took measures to start applying for the STIP grant funding several years early in advance, since these projects are awarded based on priority. In support of the grant application, last year we asked Stantec to complete a preliminary assessment of the existing asphalt infrastructure. Detailed records of the design and construction of the existing runway are not available, but anecdotal records indicate that this runway was constructed in the late 70s or early 80s, making it 35 to 45 years old. The typical expected life for such a runway is 20 to 25 years old. So as you can tell, it's surpassed its expected life significantly. The Flying Club and city have done an admirable job of maintaining the existing runway with regular crack sealing and sweeping. However, the asphalt has begun to show signs of advanced deterioration. In their assessment, Stantec highly recommended that rehabilitation be completed at the earliest opportunity, as once asphalt enters this stage of deterioration, it begins to accelerate and the cost to rehabilitate increases sharply until rehabilitation is no longer a feasible option and a full rebuild is required. Estimated at $2.75 million, a full rebuild is more than 3 times the cost of rehabilitation and is not only cost prohibitive, it is also not cost effective, as it only extends the expected life of the asphalt for 5 to 10 years more than a rehabilitation project would. Though the runway was the main focus of this grant application, the City and Flying Club also included the main taxiway, apron, and taxi lane in the application. We believe that a separate grant application for these items would result in them being considered as much lower priority than the runway project and reduce the likelihood that they would receive grant funding at a later date. The project was tendered in August and 3 bids were received as outlined in Table 1 of this RFP. The lowest bid was submitted by Border Paving and came in at $856,676, which was approximately 12% lower than the second lowest bidder. However, it is higher than the grant funding, which was determined to be 75% of the project cost, up to a maximum of $814,600. This amount also is to include materials testing and engineering. An overview of the project cost can be found in Table 2. Unit rates received for the milling and asphalt paving were very competitive. They were lower than both the pre-design estimate and the unit rates received for the 2020 Capital Works program. However, detailed design identified nearly twice the number of deep cracks along the runway compared to the pre-design estimate, which was based on the review of a 2017 aerial photo. This resulted in higher overall project costs than anticipated. Administration has reviewed this project with Stantec and the Lacombe Flying Club and has identified areas for cost savings to ensure that the maximum amount of work can be completed with the grant funding available. The first item where some savings were identified is that Red Deer Airport, which has undergone a similar project recently under the same consultant, has volunteered to complete the line painting with their own equipment at cost, which represents a savings of over $20,000. In addition, the quantity for deep crack repairs on the runway and on the taxi lanes and apron are based on what is visible on the surface. When we mill off the top 2 inches of asphalt, that might reduce the quantity of cracks and therefore the cost. As well, if the cracks are less severe in some of the less critical areas, such as the taxiway, apron, or taxi lane, we can find some additional savings by skipping the deep crack repairs and creating and completing the mill and pave with some minor crack repairs. The lower level of repair, but it will still extend the asphalt surface. And finally, the project was tendered with 4 separate schedules, and I've listed them in order of priority. The first and most important is the runway. Second is taxiway A, third is apron 1, and fourth is the taxi lane, as shown in Figure 1. Work will be completed in the order of priority until the maximum amount of the project budget is expended. Therefore, administration recommends that council approve this project to a total project value of $814,000. Sorry, $814,600. There you go. Based on the grant funding. This will result in a total contribution for the city of Lacombe of $101,825. In June, the Lacombe Regional Airport Committee passed a resolution recommending the club and city and county council approve the project. Subsequently, the Flying Club and Lacombe County have both passed motions in support of proceeding with this project in place of the approved runway steel coat which was planned for this year, based on the total estimated cost of $814,600. So before council are 3 motions to award the construction, engineering, and materials testing of the project. Any questions?
Councilor Ross?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gilkson. So this work will not be completed in 2020 if, as I have heard, is that true or not?
Correct. The project was tendered with 2 options. One was a rushed option to complete the work this year, this fall, and as you can tell from the change in weather, we're quickly running out of time to complete the work. And the second was an option to complete the work in the spring of next year. All of the proponents elected to bid based on completing the work next year. So we don't even have a construction value or an eligible bid for completing the work this year.
Councilor Ross, go ahead.
Thank you. So I'll go ahead and start making motion number 1, that council advance their runway paving project as proposed and award the Macomb Regional Airport runway 17-35 rehabilitation construction contract to Border Paving to an upset of $726,890 plus GST.
$860.
$726,890. Did I?
You said 890.
Sorry.
If I may, that's the total cost minus engineering and materials testing. So that's what's left for construction.
Any further comments regarding that? All those in favor of the motion on the floor? That was unanimous. Councilor Koenig?
I want to move that council direct administration to enter into contract with Stantec Consulting for engineering services at the cost of $76,270 plus GST.
Any comments regarding that? If not, all those in favor of the motion on the floor? That was unanimous. Councilor Hoekstra?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. That council direct administration to enter into a contract with Parkland Geotechnical Consulting Limited for materials testing during construction at the cost of $11,440 plus GST.
Any comments on that? No, all those in favor of the motion? Unanimous? Thank you. So next is 5.2, 76th Street repair. And Manager Mitchell is just sitting there waiting to do that one too.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gillison. So as you're likely aware, this part of 76th Street was recently constructed as part of the Highway 12 and 76th Street intersection improvements. And to assure you, during detailed design, a geotechnical borehole was completed adjacent to the steepest part of the slope, adjacent to Crescent Lake, as this was determined to be the most likely area to experience slope failure based on surface observations. Boreholes provide important information on the material below the surface, which can impact the design of the road structure. While they typically give engineers a good idea of what is happening below the surface, they can only be relied upon for exactly the area in which they are taken. The 76th Street design was based on the recommendations from the geotechnical analysis, and changes were made in the alignment to accommodate the slope conditions I've identified. However, this year on May 28th, asphalt cracking was seen approximately 30 meters north of where the borehole had been drilled. The road was immediately blocked off for public safety, and a catch basin was disconnected from the storm sewer and the guardrail salvaged to preserve as much of the existing infrastructure as possible. Parkland and Stantec have since completed additional investigations to identify the most likely root causes of the failure and have proposed a repair methodology. Photos 3 to 6 in this RFP show the progression of the slope failure over the month of June. So you can see what started as slope cracking has extended to over a meter in depth of slope failure. The source of the failure was identified as a localized weak zone of clay and sandy soil, sandy topsoil, which was found several meters below the surface. Boreholes were not drilled in this specific area, so the localized weak zone went undetected. Parkland Geo determined that the cause for the slope failure now was an atypical rise in the groundwater table due to heavy or prolonged precipitation this spring, which saturated the sandy topsoil, causing it to slip over the clay. 2 remediation measures were considered. The first was to remove the localized weak zone and replace the area with engineered fill, and to place a granular toe load, which is basically a stockpile of weighted material at the bottom of the slope. This additional weight prevents the slope from sliding out further. The second was to construct an engineered retaining wall. Preliminary design was reviewed for both options, and the cost for the retaining wall was approximately 10 times higher than the cost to remove and replace the weak materials. Since this was not considered an economical option, it was not pursued. The preferred remediation method is the first option, and it is recommended that it be pursued this fall. Delaying this repair would risk additional impact to the roadway, as well as the water, storm, and sanitary services which run in the street adjacent to the failure area. Risk of further slippage is most significant during spring melt next spring. The design drawings and construction specifications should be ready for tender early next week. Stantec's also been working with Alberta Environment and Parks to complete the necessary environmental and regulatory approvals in order to complete this work on an emergency basis due to its proximity to a body of water. Stantec anticipates that the approvals will be in place by September 30th. This will allow construction to occur in October of this year. The repair will be completed in 2 phases. Slope stabilization to be completed this fall, which is essentially the removal and backfill of materials and building the road up to a guidable surface. And then the road repairs will be completed, so the concrete and asphalt, either late in 2021 or 2022. By delaying the road surface repairs, this allows us time to monitor the stabilized slope to ensure there are no further movements. Administration has reviewed several strategies for funding this repair, including insurance, legal action, and provincial grant funding. Both insurance and legal action had no further merit based on responses from our lawyer. A legal opinion is included in the in-camera package and from our AUMA insurance provider. We are still waiting to hear back on the AUMA emergency funding. The estimated costs to repair the slopes are summarized in Table 1. The total cost is just over $700,000. However, we do have some available contingency left from the 76th Street intersection project. So the current unfunded budget that we're asking council to consider today is $343,450. Now, as you may have noted, the engineering materials testing for this project are proportionally much higher than a typical road construction project. And this is because these fees include a much higher level of monitoring and assessment and survey than a regular project would. For example, this project includes 8 post-construction surveys, slope monitoring equipment, which will be installed during construction, additional site supervision by geotech, and additional material testing and compaction during construction. Also of note is that there is a 18% contingency included in this project, which is much higher than the typical 10%. This is to reduce the risk of halting construction due to unforeseen circumstances requiring additional funding authorization in October. This project will first be funded from the remaining contingency in the Highway 12 and 76th Street intersection project, and the remaining funds will come from MSI funding. If AEMA funding is granted, the MSI funds will be reallocated to another project in 2022. Question.
Thank you very much. I have a question regarding the testing. Now, that testing that they're doing now, if it slides back into the pond after, will they take responsibility?
No, they will not.
They will not, at $127,000. I just found that very frustrating that there was no recourse for us on any of that. That was my only comment on that. And of course, I'm sure we looked at all options regarding rerouting the road and everything involved there before making these decisions. Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Goldson. I echo yourself as well, because obviously you've probably already done core samples of this in the first place from the initial construction. So you're going to spend $127,000 on more core samples that they're not going to stand up behind it. So if you have the data and the information from before, why are we doing it again if not, especially if they're not gonna stand behind it? It seems like pointless information if you've already have the data from the original construction.
So if I may, that again goes to the fact that one borehole was taken at to be visually the most likely area for slope failure. The results of that, they made the tweaks and the road did not fail where that borehole happened. But as you cannot see what's happening underground, what's happening 5 feet away from the borehole may not effectively reflect what is in the borehole results. And because of that, geotechnical engineers are very good at writing legal documents that cover themselves off and will not sign contracts where they accept liability for things that they cannot foresee.
Councillor Jacobson?
Have there been more boreholes done since to determine that this was in fact the only localized weak spot?
Yeah, so they have done additional boreholes on the outsides of the slope failure area, so one in the middle and 2 on the outsides. The one in the middle showed what the issue was. It showed that weak zones, and the ones on the outside showed that they had reached the extent of it.
Councillor Hoekstra?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I was wondering, and please forgive my ignorance on this too, but can't we just leave it? Like you're saying already that we have to wait to see how it's going to play out, like you'll build that wall or whatever so it won't slide further. But there's not a lot of people using that road right now. And can there be a trigger that at some point down the road we fix it to make sure we know exactly what's going to happen with it? I guess I wondered about that.
CEO Gowdy?
So one thing that Manager Mitchell didn't highlight, but I think is an important feature of the proposed work, is that the paving would not take place until that monitoring had occurred, and we were fully confident that there was no more movement. To not take any action right now, I would say risk further failure, but it's not actually risk, it's guaranteed. You would have that flow in. The nature of slope failures is that once they start, it actually only gets worse and worse because you've created this failure plane, and then you have less and less contact to resist it. And if you load it, it's even worse. So with putting the toe load, it will prevent that kick out at the bottom. And then having the extensive monitoring program is going to allow our engineers to make sure that there is no movement before investing in the finishing of the road because of that very reason.
Manager Mitchell?
If I may also expound on that, CEO Gowdy, in the road itself, there are water lines, sewer lines, and storm lines, which as of yet have not been impacted with the exception of one catch basin. If we were to allow the slope to continue to fail, it would risk all 3 of those pieces of infrastructure, which would significantly increase the cost as well as impact our ability to service Midway Center.
Councillor Koenig?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gillespie. I just wanted to commend city staff for removing the guardrail, so we did save a few bucks there anyways. That's good thinking, smart thinking. On that note, I would move that council direct administration to proceed with the design and construction of the 76th Street slope and road reconstruction project to an upset limit of 701,800 plus GST.
Any further discussion? So all those in favor of the motion? Thank you. It was unanimous, Ross.
Need the second motion? Yes. I can move that one.
Councillor Hibbs moves the second motion.
Yeah, that council authorize administration to award the 76th Street slope and road reconstruction project tender to the lowest qualified bidder.
Thank you for that. All those in favor of that motion? Unanimous. We'll move on to capital assets options on 5404 56th Avenue, 5.23.
5404 56th Avenue is the former and current, soon-to-be former site of the Parkland Regional Library. We expect the current occupant to be vacating that facility in late October, at which point the city will own it. It will be a vacant building, and council had asked to take a look at potential options. So you've reviewed the past studies, completed a tour of the facility, and debated it once before. What we've included here for you today is some information about the current city hall and the needs that we foresee in the short term, the current city hall. The requested financial implications regarding the incremental cost of borrowing at a differential rate. This had come up at your last discussion about advancing the fire hall to today and deferring the public works. We do have the estimated cost to complete renovations, and we have narrowed it down to two potential options that seem to have general council support or more council support than the other options that were presented in the past. Option A, and again, this isn't to say option A is preferred over option B, it's just the first to be listed. Option A is to utilize the building as a multifunctional space. We've laid out some potential options for phasing of that. The first phase would be occupation of a select portion of the building by the Parks Department. We estimated $50,000 cost to make that happen. Phase two would be the creation of a new council chambers. We've identified three potential areas that could be used for council chambers of varying degrees. Option one being your cheapest option, that's the existing Parkland Regional Library boardroom, which is part of the original structure of that building. There we've estimated a cost of $387,500. This is using a renovation cost estimate of $250 a square foot, which is certainly at the higher end of what you would expect to pay for renovations. However, in this building, any renovations trigger a need for fire suppression in the facility, as well as public access improvements such as a lift. So we have taken that higher end of the estimates to account for that. Area two is the area that, if you recall, when you walk into the building, right off to the left, so there's the reception area, and then you walk into the offices, or right to the left, there's a wide open area that's currently the book display area. It's about 1,900 square feet, and that would carry a renovation cost of just under $500,000. Area three is a very large area in the center of the building, the book processing area. And renovation of this would give you space for council chambers as well as auxiliary space for other city functions. And you'd be at about $1.25 million for that renovation. Phase three would be to look at further leasehold improvements or rental opportunities for all or a portion of the building. And as you can see, using the current lease rate of $10 to $12 per square foot, you will not reasonably expect to recoup significant costs if you ever put in leasehold improvements. You would really want to be looking at renting the space with virtually no investment if that were to be your option. Option B, again, that's not to say as our fallback option or anything, it's just the way it's listed, is to look at selling the building. Currently, the debenture on that building is around $800,000, I think $799,000, $400,000 the last time we checked. And we would expect that you would be able to come out without a mortgage left on the facility, particularly if you include the cash that was received by the city in the original sale and purchase offer that happened. However, that it is difficult. If you look at the assessed value versus the market value, I think there's a gap, and we don't have definitive information on what the market value of that facility would be. There's virtually no comparable buildings that are for sale. So we did have a discussion with our contracted realtor. He gave us a number, and that's where I say I'm fairly confident you would be left free and clear should you sell that building, but I cannot say that you would have significant excess funds. That option carries a carrying cost only as long as you hold the building. It's about $75,000. and that's the carrying cost that you can expect to have as long as you own the building. That's just the cost of owning the facility. Option C is, of course, shut the doors and minimize your cost, taxes, insurance, and extra freeze, and just hold it for future opportunities. There, we're estimating that your cost would lower to about $62,000. So a little bit of savings, but not a lot. So our recommendation is to find a little bit more information that would help you make this decision. I think having the unknown of how much that you could reasonably expect to receive from the proceeds of the building would make it difficult to make a really informed decision. I would say we would, and I think I said this in our first presentation, we would lean to the sales option. It gives us best clarity forward. It's a really straightforward option. However, I am also someone who is a big fan, and still am, of having that centrally located municipal parcel of land for future opportunities. So we don't have a really strong recommendation here. I think what we are recommending is let's get a licensed real estate appraiser to have a look, give us an opinion of the probable value of that building on the market, and then come back for some future decision making. There's no real rush here, because even if you tell us, sell the building, you're going to be some time before you sell the building, I think. So there's no rush to make the decision today. We would recommend getting that additional information.
Thank you, Save Gowdy. I agree, like, how do you make a decision without all the information anyway? So we pretty much have to do this. Councillor Ross?
With that in mind, thank you, Deputy Mayor Gibson. I'll just make the motion that Council direct administration to commission a licensed real estate agent appraiser to provide an opinion in the probable market value of the land and building at 5404 56th Avenue.
Any further discussion regarding that? Councillor Connick?
So to be clear, then there's no direction as to what we're doing yet, just talking to us.
Nobody else? We have a motion on the floor. All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Okay, so now we'll move on to 2021 capital budget, 5.5.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. At the March 9th council meeting, administration presented the 2021 budget timeline. One of the recommendations that administration made to council is to bring the 2021 capital budget before the operating budget for council consideration and deliberation. So tonight, administration is bringing the proposed 2021 capital budget for the city of Lacombe. One of the changes that we have made this year is we have included the operating impacts for each capital project for council to be able to see what the impact will be from adopting the 2021 capital budget on the operating budget. As you can see, all projects, some of the projects do not have any operating impacts. The reason for that is either the project is replacing an existing asset, or there is actually no additional costs, right? So that would be the reason. For everything else, those would be additional costs that would be incurred by adopting the capital projects that have been identified. One thing that I want to mention is that included in the 412,000 operating impact is 75,000 under the PRL building renovations. And as CEO Gowdy have mentioned, that 75,000 is operating costs that are due to the ownership of the building. So they actually do not relate to the capital project. So in other words, the 75,000 will be incurred as long as the city of Lacombe continues to hold the building regardless of whether the project proceeds or not. So I just want to clarify on that. We know that there have been some changes that have council has already identified based on previous discussions. So we know that it'll be changing. In previous years, typically council sees both budgets coming together. The reason why we are doing this year is to streamline the process and allow council to focus on those capital investments, have a discussion, and be able to decide what projects council wants to approve and what projects council does not want to approve or perhaps delay. Have a discussion and see what will be approved at the end. Just to give you an idea, in the last 5 years, capital budgets amounted to about 54.6 million, which means that on average you've been approving about $10.9 million in capital projects. Just to give you an idea on what the investments have been recently. Tonight, administration is proposing an $11.8 million 20 capital budget for 2021. And as I mentioned, that the operating impacts are 412, but that includes the 75,000, which, as I mentioned, will be incurred regardless. And as you can see, the different funding sources have been identified as well. Most of it being funded from provincial grants and some federal grants. And the recommended motion for tonight is that council receive the proposed 2021 capital budget for discussion and deliberation. Sorry, one last thing that I want to mention is that the 10-year capital plan will be coming to council at the next meeting on September 28th. And with that, I'm open to any questions.
Any questions for Director Reyes regarding the information he's presented to us tonight? Councillor Connick?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gullickson. So it'll be coming to the next meeting for adoption, or when's the proposed timeline for adoption?
The proposed adoption would be at the next meeting, correct?
So that's 28.
Yes, unless council wants to keep discussion on the capital budget at the next meeting, then we could bring it up for adoption in the middle of October.
Okay. Councillor Jacobson?
Just a question for Manager Reyes, or pardon me, Senior Manager Reyes. So the operating impact, those are new operating expenses that we aren't incurring, right? So have those been budgeted under with respect to council's previously directed post property tax increase?
Have they been budgeted?
So we had directed, was it 0.9?
0.8.
0.8. So have these been put in under the assumption that we're going to be increasing by 0.8 for overall?
If council adopts this budget, yes, they will. When we bring the operating budget, they will be included in that budget.
Okay.
CEO Gallo?
I think your question was technically answered, but maybe I want to give a little bit of flavor to it. Yes, I foresee big challenges meeting the 0.8 if you adopt this capital budget. That is really one of the reasons why we wanted to bring this, is to say, when you're looking at the potential for deviation from your tax policy, quite frankly, it should be deviation up. It should not be deviation down, because you will have a challenge when it comes time to incorporating these and some of your other
existing commitments within that 0.8%. That is going, we do foresee a struggle there.
Councilor Koenig?
So what's the goal tonight? Do you want us to discuss some of these things one by one, or did you want us to, what's the plan?
So this is a bit of a new process. Senior Manager Reyes and I discussed having some direction from council in terms of the capital budget as we move into the operating budget, because what we've struggled with in the past is we present an operating budget and some of the projects are included, some of them aren't, depending on sort of where we think council is going to land on it. And so we are not looking for, definitely not for adoption tonight, but if there's some high level projects, and one that we struggled with once we started costing it out, for example, was the downtown Wi-Fi. The operating impact just, it doesn't, for us, the benefit wasn't there. And so we wanted to get some of those higher level things to get council thinking about it at least.
Councilor Koenig?
Yeah, so in that vein, and concurrent over here, I think the downtown Wi-Fi I struggle with. The council and min furniture life cycle replacement, well, if the intent is to use PLR for a new council chamber, then why would we spend money on this stuff? So there's a couple things that are, it's kind of in the air there, right? I also, the rail improvement, where's that on here? Yes, rail crossing improvements. So I know some money was supposed to be spent this year. I mean, I look at the budget, there's supposed to be, I haven't seen anything done. Is that coming yet, or is that?
Unfortunately, we are entirely at CP's timeline on that. And so certainly we've given them the direction that we're interested in that work happening right away, but we haven't seen it move ahead either.
Okay.
Councilor Hoekstra?
Thanks, Mayor, Deputy Mayor. So we just made some decisions tonight. So right away, the Parkland Regional Library building renovations would be pulled off this list or not? Not necessarily, okay. And then it says to still 1.3 million for the downtown water main renewal and Highway 12. Is that still?
No, that would be more like 700.
Right, okay, so some of those numbers would be changed. And then the other thing that I wanted to, so the electronic community sign is being listed here as 115,000. So the chamber just put theirs in for over 40. So we are obviously putting in a bigger sign, or that's what's being proposed at this time. And so will that be up for discussion tonight, or is that up for discussion next time, or what's our?
Either or, whatever council's desire is. Certainly with that specific one, we costed out the sign and installation for the sign that was reviewed by council. And I think there is, it's larger, I think it has more display surface than the chamber one. So it's substantially more expensive, that's why.
May I continue?
Certainly.
So in relation to the sign, as long as the council understands, we are committed to advertising on the chamber's sign. So if we get this sign, are there some operational dollars that will be attached to us advertising on this sign as well? Like how will, I guess council needs to think about that. Then we're committed to using 2 different signs in the city, and all of that is added money as well. I guess I don't support the sign at this point in this list. I mean, I'm picking up one particular thing here, but yeah, I'll just leave it there.
Councilor Ross, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gilks, and I concur with Councilor Hoekstra that 7038 lighting project for 115,000, in my opinion, is an easy one to strike. In light of, I think the chamber does a wonderful job at that, and I see that there are other community activities that could be promoted, but that's one item that I think can be striked with the difficulties we're gonna have to meet a 28%, so, thank you.
Well, I'll speak towards the sign. I think that in this discussion right now, I'm missing the point of the sign as far as promoting events and things that the chamber sign doesn't do right at this time. When you travel the country and look at other cities and other communities, including Black Falls, they have community signs that promote activities and city messages that we would like to get out there regarding safety or whatever we're doing as part of the city. COVID would be a prime one for that. Any emergencies, those sorts of things could be on there. I do believe that sign could be supported by advertising. And I understand that it is a concern that it's in direct competition with the chamber. But I don't believe that would affect the operation of their sign. As far as us saving, I think that we could probably save ourselves at least $400 or $500 a month just on our sign rentals alone by utilizing an electronic sign, which would partially pay for that, the operation and certainly the capital project. CEO Kevin?
So when we looked at the operating cost, we did look at offsetting reductions for sign rental at that location as well, just so that is included.
Councilor Hibbs?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I have a couple questions under the community services portfolio. So dog park fencing, I'm assuming that's dog park fencing for the existing dog park. Okay. So again, that's a little bit up in the air considering what we might be doing. So I mean, it's relatively small amount, but Wolf Creek Cycle Depot Passive Park, can we just explain what that project entails? It's a little hefty and then of course there's an ongoing operating impact. So a little bit of details on that would be helpful. And then I have a couple more after that as well.
Director Duke is going to speak to the Wolf Creek Recycle Depot Passive Park opportunity. And I believe Director Thompson has been working with her.
Thank you, Councilor Hibbs and CEO Gowdy. So yes, this is a rather a joint project, meeting some goals that the Infrastructure and Planning Department division has and some that Community Services has as well. So right now, we're accepting brush piles and grass and green waste there at the recycle depot, and the goal is to remove that service in the coming months. One of the problems we'll have is that people may dump there anyway because the site is not secured or attended. And one way that we thought that might be a benefit to the community would be to develop the site with city infrastructure in the form of a small amount of fencing, some planting and some shrubs, and a passive park that is not particularly expensive to maintain, low maintenance grasses and so on. It would be a good site for wildlife viewing, for example, with the creek right there, and would serve some of the local businesses, perhaps with their office workers. And then subsequent to that, the thought was that with a community garden shutting down potentially in the near future in Lacombe, one of our two, that we might be able to locate a community garden there and that it might be a viable way to utilize that space. It'd be a different part of the city and it wouldn't cost much more to operate with water, especially right there. So that's the point of that park. And there was also potential for some revenue to support the development.
I'm just looking.
Can I carry on with the other questions?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. The other two that I have, so the Kew Gardens playground replacement, I do recall that we had some correspondence on that recently. And in that correspondence, I believe it identified that project for 2022. So I was just wondering why that is now showing up in 2021.
Thank you, Councillor Hibbs. So that is a project that would be 100% MSI funded. And the thinking there is that we are currently on a schedule for replacement of playgrounds based on their chronological age. And we do 2 playgrounds every other year. And so that schedule would be maintained. However, Kew Gardens is older than the ones that we're replacing today. So it's been missed. And so the thought was that it's not outside of the program that we developed to actually start that next year, just insert it quickly into the program and get it taken care of.
So it would just get moved up a year, or it's actually being added, like,
It is proposed as an added playground, so there would be 3 done in the next 2 years.
okay, thank you. And then my final question would be the Lacombe Athletic Park, the LAPA upgrades, if we could just get some clarification as to what that entails.
Certainly. So currently, as you know, the project is underway to expand the field house. And the Lacombe Athletic Park Association is utilizing the donation that they got from NE Global. In 2018, I believe it was received. That was initially announced as $2 million. It's actually been clarified to be $1.5 million for capital development. And that will fund the fieldhouse expansion project, part of the project, which is called Phase 1 now. Phase 2 of that same project is the installation of the international grade running track and the field infrastructure. And that was slated to take place the year right following this fieldhouse expansion. However, the association will rely heavily, not only on grants potentially from the city of Lacombe, but also from the county. And of course, fundraising, which is not possible. And they simply have not been able to do any this year at all. They'll need robust fundraising to take place before they can really commence that. So that phase of the project is, the timeline on that is uncertain at this time.
And so the dollars that we have marked there would be for what purpose specifically then?
Our contribution was planned in the 2020 capital, 2020 10-year capital plan to take place in 2021. We have prepared the budget with that amount in there, but I believe we could recommend potentially that be moved forward back, I guess, a year to 2022.
Thank you.
Yes, sorry about that. Councillor Hibbs, or Hoekstra, I'm sorry.
That's fine. Sorry to trip back there, but what are we still doing to the Parkland Regional Library to the tune of $500,000?
CO Gowdy?
That is to your direction. That's if council moves ahead with renovations. We've proposed 50,000 for occupation by parks and 475 for occupation by council for the lowest cost council chambers.
But did we not decide tonight to just we just didn't decide okay. A little slow on the uptake.
So our public works building stays in here then? No?
It is currently proposed for inclusion. And as you can see, servicing that debt carries a cost of about $150,000.
Okay. Councillor Jacobson?
Just, could you explain what the downtown Wi-Fi project is?
The council's strategic plan, there was a strategic objective highlighted that was to create Wi-Fi in the downtown. We sourced this through our service provider, TELUS or Shaw.
UtilityNet.
UtilityNet, I'm sorry. I should
That's okay.
double check there. Through UtilityNet, this would offer, what's been proposed here would offer high-grade Wi-Fi coverage of the downtown suitable for use by most businesses, not high data use businesses, but most businesses or residences in the downtown, not to mention visitors and residents that are in the downtown. The service would be appreciated, I'm sure, by some. There's no doubt about it. The challenge we have, I think, if you could get businesses to uptake this, there would be value. But I don't think you would actually get many businesses that would be willing to conduct their business on the public Wi-Fi network, no matter what assurances you were able to provide them.
And so I think your actual community payback on this kind of a cost wouldn't, I don't think you'd ever achieve it. So we've priced it out. We certainly wanted to offer you the option, given that it was a strategic plan item, but it's not one that we're recommending moving ahead with at this time.
Councillor Conick?
So just to backtrack, you said Public Works. The operating impact is 146,315. Is that the debt servicing or is that to operate the building? Because I'm assuming we pay obviously to operate this building. So is that increase over and above? Or, because in theory it should be less because it's a newer building, correct? So what is this number exactly?
So this is debt servicing. Now, I would caution you that actually for a year or two, you'll have a crossover where you'll have increased operating costs because you'll be operating two buildings to some level. But overall, you're right. The energy costs, the operational cost from that standpoint should go down. But of the $4 million, remind me, the source of funding for the entire $4 million is debt.
Correct. Okay, so this is debt servicing, it's not money to operate the building. It's
correct.
Okay, I just want that clarification.
And the reason because earlier Senior Manager Reyes said 100,000 of servicing buys you 2 million of capital, and here we've said actually it's only 75,000 is because I assume that this has been capitalized over a 35-year period due to the life of the asset rather than 25 years as it before.
Yes, and it only includes one payment. In 2021, in subsequent years, it will be 2 payments. Meaning that it will be double what the amount that you're seeing now.
It's gonna be 300,000?
That doesn't jive.
It would be 232,000.
Councillor Ross, you had your hand up?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor Goldson. So I'm hearing some of the discussions and Wi-Fi for 150. I don't hear a lot of warm and fuzzies. The lighting sign at 115, the renovations of the Park and Regional Library, obviously we're still waiting for information and more information pertaining to the value of that to make that decision on that. And the Wolf Creek Recycling Depot for $80,000, that seems like more of an aesthetic improvement. Like if we were to do anything to Wolf Creek Recycling Depot, personally think we could consider for a few months manning it, because I think we've been fiscally responsible by in some of the reduction of services, but I think that's one area that, you know, on one hand, we're trying to promote people to have heart and pride in their property, to have an available option just to put disposals from grass and leaves and branches, but we're still trying to reduce the abuse of, I've been there a lot of hours already, seeing so many end dump trailers of customer operators that is probably contributing to the pile far more significantly than the average resident that just wants somewhere to take a few branches that keep up the heart and pride of ownership of the property. So anyways, if you add them four together, there's $870,000, which would make it significantly easier for administration to bring forth a budget. But I think there's some decisions moving forward for the Park and Regional Library that information isn't available till further council meetings. So do we start striking some of these that for direction for administration, or do we wait till we have further information from Park and Regional Library and go through this again at another meeting? What makes that sense for a process moving forward?
I don't think you will have the information back on the Parkland Regional Library in time to inform your decision for capital budgeting. In terms of the actual value of the building. I think you'll have to make the decision about renovation prior to having that, probably. Unfortunately, just because of the timing, and we'll try to get it as soon as possible. But initiating it today, it could take a couple of weeks for sure. In terms of process for tonight, I have been marking projects that I think there is further discussion to be had for council. And so if you'd like to sort of hold off until the next council meeting, we can have this again and start it off specifically by talking about those projects that we're hearing more about, that council wants another opportunity to talk about. Or you can give us direction tonight, that's fine too, but I don't want to rush it.
Councillor Conick?
Sorry, just Councillor Ross is something that confused me. So as of November 1st, end of October, there can be no more brush at Wolf Creek. Correct. Okay. For anybody.
Correct.
Okay, because I thought he was suggesting that.
That's just, I emphasize my personal thought that we should explore some way of still having an option of possibly manning it even for 3 months for, say, that people allowed to do some cleanup or something, say, hypothetically, university students, just because I feel we've taken away of a significant amount of services within our community, within our term. And I think we're punishing all of the citizens instead of some of them that are dumping a huge amount of branches. I'm talking end up loads that are heaped and tarped. They're the ones that we should be clamping down on rather than the average citizen that just wants to the grass recycling bins full so that goes there instead, has an alternate option, or a few branches that they just want to improve a few trees. Like I think we're like, I know it's our responsibility to, I also see as council now, we're trying to create a solution with fiscal responsibility with the highest degree of compliance and the least amount of scrutiny. But I just think I think there's other ways to try to limit the abuse. That's a massive pile. And I'm thinking this year, because of COVID, with the 4 on 4 off public works, it still was difficult to remove it in this specific year because of the amount, and our administration and our managers and directors did an awesome job through COVID, but there was difficult times because of the 4 on 4 off. You did not have as many staff on total in any given day to do the tasks of removing that waste because it got out of hand. Like on a regular year, it probably would have been hauled out faster, but not during COVID because of trying to accommodate the situations and to deal with administration.
Councillor Conick?
Anyways, I just want to be clear on that because that's a whole other discussion for a whole other.
Right, that's a later discussion.
That's
but
nothing to do with, I just want to be clear on that. It's, as of that date, nothing, period. Because that's going to throw all kinds of, people are going to start taking all kinds of things. So anyways, that's all I wanted to clarify there.
And I would actually, sorry, just to put a bit of support behind the Wolf Creek Recycle Depot at Hassel Park, because I see it as it's definitely on the bubble. The reason that we ultimately supported including this for your consideration is that we were looking for a positive way to head off illegal dumping and some of that sort of negativity to the closure that we expect we will get, and having something that is an asset to the community led us to believe, well, it'll be less likely for people to abuse it. That's all I would say the park was looking to accomplish those two things. Creation of a nice space, also kind of trying to avoid some unsightliness.
Any other questions regarding the budget tonight, or do you want to wait until the 28th? Councillor Ross?
I guess once again, do we start making a couple motions of what we strongly want to remove? Does that give you more?
Yep, for sure.
Okay, first I will say item 7063, I will make a motion to remove from the budget for starters.
Sorry, what?
7063 is the $150,000 Wi-Fi. Making that by motion, and if it's defeated, then it gives council direction, or it gives administration direction.
Any further discussion on that motion on the floor? Okay, all those in favor? Unanimous?
So I'm making that one. Sorry, go ahead.
I would just like to make the motion that we receive it as for discussion and leave it at that. I don't want to jump into, because there's things here, I know there's some feeling around the PLRL building renovations, but I think we need to think on that a little bit more. I'm a little disappointed we're not, think we can get an appraisal quickly enough, because then it was, as Deputy Mayor alluded to, we need to have all the facts. And you're just saying we may not have all the facts by the time we make this decision.
We will certainly attempt to have it as soon as we possibly can, and I will even send it out once we get it. I will send out the number preliminarily to council as soon as we get it. I just, it is down to a couple of weeks is all. So it'll be to our contractor to whether they can do it or not.
Because there again, like that one, the 20,000 per year is contingent on whether or not we do that. So there's a couple things.
Let me go back then and say I'm confident that we will be able to get you a appraisal prior to your next meeting, and we'll have it to you.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor regarding the proposed 2021 capital budget for discussion and deliberation, and receive it as information. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Ross was opposed. Okay, so we'll move on for now then to sponsorship request. Item 5.5.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Phillipson. This report outlines a sponsorship request from the Gord Bamford Foundation in support of a fundraising drive-in for mental health concert planned for September 26th in Lacombe. In addition to a financial contribution, the foundation is seeking in-kind support from the city in the form of administrative support to organize the event and use of a city property or facility as a location. The foundation has already secured sponsorships from Vesta Energy and Lacombe Days Association for a total of $20,000. So they are seeking $5,000 to achieve their $25,000 base cost for the concert from the city. Tickets are expected to cost $75 per vehicle with a maximum 5-person per vehicle. And just to put this in perspective, this is approximately $15 per person to attend. And like many other venues in Lacombe, admission and or membership fees are a reality, and this is perfectly well in line with what typically people might pay to go to something. The concert will be 100% compliant with provincial requirements to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And to give you some background, the Bamford Foundation has staged a number of these concerts, I believe 6 already, throughout Alberta this summer in support of mental health, and is finishing the season with a Lacombe and a Sylvan Lake concert. The foundation did already survey a number of city locations and has reached an agreement with the Lacombe Flying Club for use of the airport grounds, which it finds ideal for this particular concert. Administration is recommending that that the city approve that council approve the financial support, as this concert will help restore a small degree of the city's recreation and culture service level, which was greatly reduced in 2020. I'm happy to take questions if you have any.
Thank you. Any questions for Director G? I have some regarding this. Last night at our Lacombe Days meeting, we were trying to find advertisements for the Lacombe concert. There was none. There was no mention anywhere, I don't believe, on any of his sites, on his site about a Lacombe event. And he is waiting for this decision, is that the reason?
That is correct, Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Dox, and I concur with your comments, and I just saw one posted on Facebook, I think today, the airport location, everything was all kind of a surprise, so September 26th, which obviously was a concern to us, Lacombe Days, as we're involved in sponsorship as well, and a 2-week time frame. And is there going to be 2 shows still at 150 to 175 vehicles then?
That has not been determined yet. I believe that'll depend on demand for tickets in ticket sales.
Any further discussion regarding the event? No? Could I have a motion towards that? Huh? Councilor Hope?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I move that council approves the request from the Gord Bamford Foundation for sponsorship of a drive-in for mental health musical concert in Lacombe on September 26, 2020.
I have a question regarding the motion. Do we have to have the amount in that motion?
Yes.
It's ideal, you do, yes.
So you'll add that $5,000?
You-
Thank you. Any other discussion regarding the motion? No? All those in favor? That was unanimous for us. So now on the advertising, just going backwards, he does all the advertising and ticket sales, and
That is correct.
we don't have to worry about any of that. Okay. So on to 5.7 then, council committee appointments, CEO Gowdy.
So tonight we have appointments for you for the library board and the municipal planning commission. Recommended for the municipal planning commission, Mr. Tyler Nowichin, who is the purveyor of the home hardware in town, as well as Sherry Lynn Smalley for the City of Lacombe Library Board. Both of their resumes are available to you in camera, and we endorse them administratively as being suitable for the boards they've been proposed. And those have also been reviewed and endorsed by Mayor Creasy, who is with us tonight.
Councillor Hibbs.
Thank you. Seeing as how I sit on the MPC, I would like to go ahead and make that motion. That council approve the appointment of Tyler Nowichin to the Municipal Planning Commission with a term ending September 14th, 2023.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Unanimous? Councillor Hoekstra.
I'll make the other motion, even though I don't know her, but I trust the recommendation that council approve the appointment of Sherry Lynn Smalley to the City of Lacombe Library Board with a term ending September 14th, 2023.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. All right. Administrative reports. CEO Gowdy, do you have one available? No,
Not for this meeting.
for this, okay. And council mailbox. You had a chance to review all the letters.
So the one, if I could, on behalf of Mayor Creasy, he had asked that I put forward a possible letter of endorsement that could be sent from the City of Lacombe on behalf of the City of Red Deer and the concerns they've expressed about the ambulance dispatch. And there's a tight timeline associated with it, so that's what, there's not an RFD associated, we got it, and they're looking for a quick turnaround. So if council was supportive of that, we would be happy to draft a letter in support of our partners there.
Council Connor?
Do you need a motion on that?
Yes, I think so.
Council make that motion.
So we have a motion on the floor to support the City of Red Deer regarding the ambulance dispatch. Any further discussion regarding that? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Is unanimous? Any other questions arising from the correspondence? If not, can I get a motion to accept those as information?
I can make that motion.
Councillor Hibbs, thank you. All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Okay, committee reports. Police commission minutes, anything arising from that? Councilor Connor? Cone Regional Waste. You're on that board too, Councilor Hibbs, I believe, are you not?
Just as an alternate.
Alternate, okay.
I think, wait, sorry, which one? The regional waste. I was not present actually at that meeting, but I could find out an answer if required.
MPC, there wasn't anything really coming forward from there. Heritage Resources, Councilor Jacobson, anything of interest? No, okay, Art Collection Committee, also you're on that. All right, we'll get to council reports then. Mayor Creasy is not here. I do not have one. Councilor Ross? No. Councilor Hoekstra?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I don't have a written one, but I just wanted to bring up that the chamber met last week, and yeah, I just wanted to remind us that part of the agreement that we have with the chamber is that we're committed to spending $3,600 a year on their sign. So I did want them to know, we want us to be reminded of that for the next 10 years. We have a 10-year commitments of $36,000. Then secondly, I asked them if they would want me to say it, and they agreed that weirdly, the timing of the building sale happened in the right year. Even if they weren't, even if it was, there's some awkwardness regarding it. A lot of chambers in the province have become cash poor due to COVID and may not survive, and our chamber will survive due to the agreement we had with them. So I thought I wanted to highlight that. And there still will be an awards gala on October 24th. We don't know how it's gonna look. It'll be all primarily virtual, but yet, because that usually was quite an event that we all like to attend. So stay tuned as to what we might have to do as a city regarding the awards gala. So that, yes, I just wanted to.
Councilor Richardson? Your report? It's as presented.
My report was as presented.
And Councilor Hibbs?
I don't have anything to report specifically, but just a reminder again that Smile Cookies campaign has launched, and proceeds do support Big Brothers and Big Sisters, obviously an important organization within our community. So that's just all I wanted to mention again publicly.
Thank you. And Councilor Connick? Thank you for that. And we'll do the approval of our minutes, item 7.1 from August 10th. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to review them. Councilor Hoekstra?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Gullickson. I move that we accept the minutes as presented.
Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you. It's unanimous. Okay, now we move on to item 8.1. It's my notice of motion. And this is one that I brought forward last year, and with what's happened in Black Falls and the changes with Bolt and different things that may be more pertinent now, so I brought it again. The council direct administration to prepare a report to committee outlining the possibilities of an expanded use of Connects within the city of Lacombe. And I will leave it at that because I shouldn't discuss it right now. I believe that'll come forward on the 28th, so we can have discussion regarding Connects and what we can possibly do within our city. Okay, and that's the end of our agenda. So I would
It's a 5-minute break.
propose a break and then a motion to go into camera, maybe then go into break, or a break first. Doesn't matter either way. So maybe we'll get the motion to go into camera and then we can stop our broadcast. Councilor Jacobson? We'll move that. So all those in favor to go into camera? Unanimous, thank you very much. Thank you. We'll have a 5-minute break.